So I'm going to invite everyone to join me in putting our palms together, or my palms together. And Jim, I'm going to advance the slide, and you can begin when you're ready.
公司大德神定，为此发挥记忆界众生，经传妙法论教导我们如何了生脱死离苦得路，是真无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss, and end birth and death, and quickly realize none but
Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto sucheto ye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, bai qian wan jie nan zao yi. 我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome to this week's exploration of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. This week we are going to continue in seeing what the Buddha, Sixth Patriarch, Bodhidharma, Shufu, Venerable Master has to say about precepts, all the things that they have taught to Buddhist disciples in the past 3,000 years. So we're going to continue that for today, and we'll find out why precepts are, how you say, the foundation of all Buddhist practices. You always hear me saying that. I said that for generosity as well. Generosity is the foundation. And precepts is also, yeah, one of the foundations of Buddhist practice, and we'll see why. Foundation doesn't mean there's only, like only one foundation. It just means that it is indispensable on the path to end suffering. Okay, so we're going to recite Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times in English. So I'm going to invite everyone in joining me again in putting our palms together. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Namo, quelling quelling disasters, lending life. Medicine Master Buddha Namo, quelling disasters, lending life. Medicine Master Buddha, Medicine Master does come one. 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 Okay, let me change the slide. And as I'm doing that, let me ask, does anyone have any questions or something interesting to share? Your questions do not need to be related to today's to Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. It can be on anything to do with the Dharma. If you can either type it in the chat box or you can unmute your mic and just just say whatever you want to say. One of the reasons why I ask for questions at the beginning and not always at the end is because sometimes if I can address the question in the in the lecture itself, in the class itself, I'll try to do that to make it more relevant. Okay, precepts, sila. Okay, so last week, this is kind of where we stopped. We looked at what the sutra in 42 sections, what the Buddha said. He said, if you understand the precepts, okay, this is Shufu's commentary on the sutra in 42 sections. And if I'm not mistaken, the sutra in 42 sections was the first sutra that actually, let me see, let me put it in a way that sounds correct. It was the first sutra that went from India to China, if I'm not wrong, but I'm not sure. So if someone wants to do a fact-finding thing, you can let me know. Okay, so Shufu in his commentary in the sutra, he said, if you understand the precepts, then you can delve deeply into all Buddha dharmas. If you do not understand the precepts, then you will be like a cloud floating in the sky with no foundation at all. Okay, so this is what Shufu says. And in the Avatamsaka Sutra, chapter 10, the Buddha, I'm not sure if the Buddha said this or one of the Bodhisattvas, but there's this verse, just like building a foundation first, then building a palace, practicing giving and upholding precepts are the same. They are the foundation for Bodhisattva practices. Hey, look at that. I spoke about giving and precepts as a foundation, and I didn't know I was already quoting the Avatamsaka Sutra. I totally forgot about this slide when I mentioned in the beginning. Honest. Okay, let me just mute someone. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay. We go back to the Sutra in 42 sections. The Buddha said, my disciples may be several thousand miles away from me, but if they remember my precepts, they will certainly obtain the fruits of the way. If those who are by my side do not follow my precepts, they may see me constantly, but in the end, they will not obtain the way. So I think what the Buddha is trying to say is that you could have the Buddha right in front of you. Either, if you were lucky enough to be by the Buddha side when he was around, as in physically, or right now, having images of the Buddha in front of us, either at home or in a monastery, or when you come and visit the monastery. So the Buddha's right in front of you, but we don't really know what the Buddha taught us or what the Buddha represents. And here the Buddha is emphasizing on precepts. So if you remember my precepts, you will certainly obtain the fruits of the way. And if you remember from last week, one of the slides that we covered was that in the last sutra that the Buddha spoke, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha's one of his final instructions was that for all his disciples, after he was gone, for all the disciples to take the Dharma and the Vinaya, meaning the sutras, the shastras, as well as the precepts as our master. Okay. What else does Shufu say? Okay. Someone asked Shufu a question: can precepts show us where our Buddha nature lies? And that's a really good question, you know. And Shufu's answer is a bit, how you say, uh, it's very advanced. Shufu says the precepts are simply your Buddha nature. So the question, this reminds me of the Sixth Petrarch Sutra, where Venerable Shensyo, he wrote a verse on the wall, and I can't quote the verse word for word, but it says, constantly polish the mirror so that no dust alights. Okay, I'm doing a very bad job. Basically, the meaning was that you're always mindful of the thoughts in your mind, and as they arise, you purify your thoughts and don't dwell and don't dwell on any thoughts. You constantly purify your thoughts. So that's like the question. We at our level, or at least at my level, my perception is that precepts are here to guide us, and they show us the way to uncover our Buddha nature. But Shufu, at a very advanced level, says the precepts are simply your Buddha nature. So he leaves you to go figure it out. And once you can kind of figure it out, either, of course, we begin with the intellectual pondering of what that actually means. And if you can get it, based on your understanding of what you know the precepts are and what the precepts are meant to do, then it takes your practice deeper. And then as your practice goes deeper, so does your understanding. And then as your understanding goes deeper, your practice benefits as well. So it becomes like a feedback loop that makes you better in your wisdom and in your practice. So precepts are simply your Buddha nature. Very few people, I believe, can, answer in that way. Okay. Okay, wait, let me see. Anyone want to try to give their uh, perspective or their ideas on why Shifu says the precepts are simply your Buddha nature? Okay, if you're too shy, but you want to give it a try, because Shifu says we should all share what we know about the Dharma. It's not easy, trust me, I know. But if you're too shy, but you still want to share because you know it's a really good thing, you can type it in the chat box. Okay, I I I think that when Shufu says this, the precepts are simply your Buddha nature. I think it's because the precepts do come from a Buddha nature. Um, and
Can
yes,
I try?
of course, Randy,
Um,
please.
um, that means we need to have a pure moral so that we can still our mind better. If when we do not have pure morality, we cannot uh, keep our mind still.
Just Randy, that's actually very good. That you have just how you say, that's in one of my future slides. I'm not sure if we have enough time to do it today, but what you just mentioned about how the role of precepts, um, uh, the role of precepts in helping the mind calm down, that's precept, samadhi, and wisdom. Yes, so that's a really good answer. And precept, samadhi, wisdom, as we shall see, is how we can get our Buddha nature. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Anyone else? Okay, if you still want to, type in the chat box. All right. So let's move on. Okay, my dream for, as we explore sutras is for people to open up and not be shy or be afraid in in sharing what they know or asking questions. Uh, there's no, how you say, uh, right or wrong or anything. And maybe towards the end of the class, I can explain a bit more about why I say this. Also, we have some announcements to make at the end of the class. And we also have a story to share from last week. So Hilda, if you see me running, if you see us running out of time, please remind me to so that you have enough time to make an announcement. Julie as well, so I can share your story from last week. Okay, so continuing back on precept, Shufu says that to uphold the precepts means to refrain from afflicting or disturbing others. As we cultivate, we should always reflect upon ourselves, trying not to afflict or disturb others. So this is very interesting because this is a really good way to examine how we hold the precepts. Sometimes the way we hold the precepts actually create a lot of affliction for other people, uh, because we hold to the precepts, how you say, in a very rigid way, um, without understanding the spirit of the precepts. We can create problems for other people. Um, Examples, well, let me see. Okay, there's one example about holding the 8 precepts. If any of you remember the last time we explored the 8 precepts, I explained that the function of the 8 precepts is to create the right conditions for you to carry out your practice, either in meditating or in reciting the Buddha's sitting meditation, or in reciting the Buddha's name, or in bowing. Therefore, we have no we refrain from entertainment. We refrain from eating afternoon, so the stomach is light, so we don't feel drowsy when we meditate. What else? No entertainment, meaning we don't agitate the mind, give it a lot of things to get excited. No music, no adorning the body like perfume, jewelry. So our meaning, don't have thoughts of desire of the opposite sex. Okay, so you take all those conditions, and then you are creating a nice, quiet environment. You're preparing the mind so that you can meditate or recite the Buddha's name. When I used to take the 8 precepts, I didn't know that. So what I would do, okay, I didn't actually know. It didn't happen to me. What I have heard, what some people do is they go home and they say, okay, no one can listen to music because I'm not supposed to listen to music. They don't really meditate or recite the Buddha's name, but they just create a rule in the house that no one else can listen to music because they have taken the 8 precepts. It's very important, and they cannot listen to music, so no one should play any music. Something like that, where you hold the precepts in a very rigid way, but you create afflictions for people. So Shufu says to uphold the precepts means to refrain from afflicting or disturbing others. So that's one very not interesting. That's one way you can look at yourself when you hold the precepts or when you do your Buddhist practice. Are you using your Buddhist practice to create affliction for others? Like you are very important, or you have something very urgent or important to do for the Dharma, and therefore other people should cater to your demands or uh, your needs, for example. And interestingly enough, one of the Precept Sutra during the time of Sikhin, the Buddha Sikhin, Sikkhin. He's one of the, I think, 7 Buddhas of 7 past Buddhas before Shakyamuni Buddha came. If I'm not mistaken, during that time, the monks had only one verse as a precept. And the verse was, just as bees harvest pollen from a flower, harming neither its appearance nor scent, and only taking nectar when they go. Okay, let me read that again properly. Just as bees harvest pollen from a flower, harming neither its appearance nor scent, and only taking nectar when they go, so do bhikkhus enter a village for alms, offending and troubling not a soul. They pay no heed to people's deeds or misdeeds, but only mind their own behavior. Is my conduct proper or improper? So just like when Shakyamuni Buddha started accepting people to become monks in the beginning, there were no precepts. The monks all knew what they had to do. They never bothered anyone. They, just like the verse, as a bee visits a flower for its nectar, after the bee leaves, you can't tell if a bee has been there because the bee does not damage the flower at all. So during the Buddha Sikhin, one of the past 7 Buddhas of antiquity, I think they're commonly called that. This was the Precept Sutra, just one verse, okay, or maybe one verse from the Precept Sutra. All right. Okay, let's continue. Shufu also says upholding the precepts means letting no evil emerge in each and every thought. So precepts are not just actions by the body and speech that we enunciate, that we say, but also in the mind, letting no evil emerge in each and every thought. So this is a fairly profound way of looking at the precepts, because all actions and all speech, what comes before that, a thought or intention in the mind, we have to have intentionality for speech and for actions to happen. So the origin of all karma, or all the origin of all intention behind karma comes in the mind. So Shofu is pointing to the source, rather than lower down the stream when it's already happening. Shifu says, moral precepts are the very lives of cultivators. You could say that they are where the entire Dharma body and wisdom life are, or even where the Dharma body and wisdom life of the entirety of Buddhism are. When the Buddha was about to enter Nirvana, Venerable Ananda asked the Buddha 4 questions. One of the questions was, when you, the Buddha, are present in this world, you are our teacher. After you have entered Nirvana, however, who do we regard as the teacher? The Buddha replied, let the precepts be your teacher. Precepts are wisdom and radiance. So in this slide, Shofu is quoting the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, where the Buddha, in his final instructions to Ananda, one of his instructions was, take the precepts as your teacher. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Shufu says, we are currently studying the precepts. Yes, Shufu, we are. So Shufu says, once we understand the precepts, we will know how to be a person. Once we understand the basis for being a person, we will also understand the basis for being a sage. So the study of the precepts is very important. In order to help this world, first of all, we must not be in order to help this world, first of all, we must not contend, not be greedy, not seek, not be selfish, not pursue personal advantage, and not lie. We should set an example with our own conduct and be a model for other people. In that way, the world will become more peaceful day by day. In the last paragraph, okay, maybe let's go to the first paragraph before we go to the last paragraph. Once we understand, Shufu says, the precepts are the basis of how to be a person, meaning how to be a decent human being. And we will see in a later slide that I have that the 5 precepts, the precepts for lay people, is actually if you maintain the 5 precepts, you don't even have to take the 5 precepts officially, but if you maintain the 5 precepts, you are planting the causes for future rebirth as a human. So if you want to come back as a human and not as an animal or in the lower realms, then the 5 precepts are seen as the basic, the least you have to do, in order to maintain a human rebirth. So that's the 5 precepts. And in the second paragraph, Shufu said we should set an example with our own conduct and be a model for other people. This is very, very significant what Shufu is saying here, because say if you come to a monastery or as a disciple of the Buddha, the more precepts that you hold, the better the example of uh, uh, the more precepts you hold, the more you should be a model Buddhist, the more you should embody what the Buddha is trying to teach. So, meaning, if you hold the five precepts, then if you hold it properly, then you become a really good example of what a lay Buddhist person is. And you should not be proud when you meet people who have not taken refuge, for example, or who have not taken the precepts. The five precepts should not make you feel proud that you have, but you should be more humble, you should be more respectful than people who don't. And then people who commonly follow the eight precepts, or like if you are a um, novice monk, a novice monastic who has taken the 10 precepts, then your behavior should be even better than someone who has taken the five precepts. I'm saying this because sometimes I come across um, groups of people who, because they have taken, more precepts than other people, for example, like the Bodhisattva precepts, they act like they're a lot better. Uh, they they act like they're a lot more qualified and a lot better than other people, and sometimes they feel like it gives them the right to boss other people around in a monastery. I've come across instances where people holding the Bodhisattva precepts actually feel like they are more senior and they can boss people around who have not taken the Bodhisattva precepts, um, which is uh, is the total opposite of what precepts are trying to do. So if you look at the Bodhisattva precepts, which are meant to make you act like a Buddha, a Bodhisattva, so you can become a Buddha. If you hold the Bodhisattva precepts, then you should be you should act like a Bodhisattva, because that's what the precepts are trying to make you do. And then the pressure is on you to really represent the Buddha's teachings. So a monastic should always be a good example of the Buddha's teachings because of the precepts that they hold. So the more precepts you hold, the more the better example of what a Buddhist you should be, rather than feeling more superior or looking down on others. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to say that. It is so basically having more precepts should reflect in your conduct, in your personality, your behavior, your thinking, and in how you treat people. Yeah. So the more precepts you hold, the harder it is. Okay, let's move on. Shufu says the world today is filled with terror. Anyone who reads the news can identify with that. Shufu says people of all races are in a perpetual state of fear, so that they don't feel safe when they walk about. They can't taste the food they eat, and they can't sleep peacefully. What is the principle behind this? Why has such a state appeared? So Shufu said this, I believe, in the 70s or the 80s. It's been 30, 40 years since then. And it was, if Shufu said this today, it would be just as applicable, or even more applicable. Shufu says those who believe in Buddhism should pay particular attention to the principle governing this phenomenon. It is because the evil offenses and evil karma that people are creating are filling up the heavens. Each person keeps creating more karma and never makes an attempt to eradicate the karma that they have amassed. So, why have I included this quote? Is precepts are there to prevent us from creating unwholesome uh, or evil karma and offenses, and it helps us correct our habits so that uh, so that when we want to do something unwholesome or considered an offense, we use precepts to guide us so that we change our behavior. So that in the last line, Shifu said, makes an attempt to eradicate the karma so that we can purify our karma instead, rather than continuing to create the same offenses time after time. So in the next slide, Shifu says, everyone has committed the karma of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, taking intoxicants, and lying. It is simply because people do not maintain and uphold the precepts which govern these 5 actions that slowly, bit by bit, the karma accumulates. When the karma from killing living beings become great enough, the energy of animosity will completely fill up a great system of a billion worlds. So Shufu said this in Healing Lies the Treasure Trove, one of the publications by BTTS. So now we know why precepts are important. Okay, by now, after all these quotes by the Buddha and Shufu. So let's look at what are the various precepts. Okay, so we have the 5 precepts, we have the 8 and 10 precepts, then we have the bhikshu and bhikshuni precepts, or the monastic precepts, and then we have finally the bodhisattva precepts. So these precepts all serve a very specific function. You can hold precepts without really knowing why you're holding the precepts. Better than not holding precepts, but it is highly, highly recommended that we understand that what should our intentions be, or what we're getting ourselves into when we hold precepts. Like when you take medicine, you want to know why you are taking the medicine and what the medicine is supposed to do. No one, there's nothing wrong with you, or when you see medicine on a counter without knowing what it's for, nobody in their right minds would just grab the medicine and start consuming the medicine or injecting it in their bodies, right? Same goes with precepts. You can say precepts are medicine for our afflictions, but before we take the medicine, it would be best if you knew how to take the medicine properly. So the 5 precepts, as I mentioned before, helps us create the conditions or the karma for future human rebirth. Okay, 5 precepts. Okay, and then the 8 and 10 precepts, in general, okay, not always. These are just in general. There are always a lot exceptions. 8 and 10 precepts lead to heavenly rebirth. It can also lead to arhatship, depending on the individual. But usually 8 and 10 precepts, they are mentioned as you are planting the conditions for heavenly rebirth. 5 precepts can also lead to heavenly rebirth, depending on the blessings that you generate. But minimum 5 precepts is human rebirth. And if you have the 5 precepts and the 10 good deeds, they say that, yeah, that more or less, not guarantees, but more or less leads to a heavenly rebirth. And then why do we take monastic precepts, the bhikshu and bhikshuni precepts? Simple: to be an arhat, to end suffering, to end birth and death, to cross into, to go beyond duality. And why do we take the bodhisattva precepts? To learn how to become a Buddha. So the precepts are introduced in that way, depending on the potentials and the intentions of living beings. Not everyone is interested or see themselves as being capable of becoming a Buddha. So they may not be interested in taking the bodhisattva precepts. Some people, when they hear that, oh, 5 precepts are the minimum for being reborn as a human, oh, I better take them because, I definitely want to come back at least as a human being and not as an animal, or be reborn in the hell realms, or be reborn as a hungry ghost, because that's your alternative, without the 5 precepts. So they say, oh, then I better take the 5 precepts. So their intention is to come back as a human. And so precepts are given, or how you say, yeah. So these sets of precepts are based on an individual's affinity with the Dharma, with how they see themselves, with what they want, their intentions in practice. So so that's why you don't force people. Someone who has no interest in being an arhat, in ending suffering, you can't force someone to be a monastic. Simple as that, or to take the Bodhisattva precepts. All right. Okay. So let's go move on to the five precepts for now. We'll talk a bit about the five precepts and then we move on to the rest of the precepts. What are the five precepts? I think I hope everyone knows this. Abstaining from killing. What is killing? Killing includes harming, oppressing anyone. That means making people do things they don't want to do, oppressing, destroying life, um, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of hatred. All these are covered under killing. So destroying life is very interesting because that's one reason why in monastic precepts, monks, we do not farm. There's a precept for not farming. However, because of conditions, in China, monks do farm. Monks in China historically do plant their own food because the conditions were very different. What conditions were different? People in China did not know how to give alms to monks. Not like in India, even before the Buddha's time, there was already a culture of renunciants who would devote themselves to their spiritual practice, and lay people knew that because these were holy people, it, uh, that if any lay people were to support these holy people in their spiritual quest, it would generate blessings for themselves. So there's already this culture of um, renunciants and lay people supporting the renunciants with food. But when Buddhism went to China, that culture was not present. So if you went on as a monk, if you went on alms round, no one would knew what you were doing, and you can't ask for food. When you go on alms round, you can't say, "Oh, I'm a monk, and I'm here, and this is how I live, and I'm walking around for lay people to generate blessings." You can't say that as a monk when you go on alms round. So they had to resort to planting, farming their own food instead. Uh, we don't harm plants. Monks do not harm plants. We how you say, we don't say like cut flowers for offerings to the Buddha. We don't do that. And there's also a sutra where there were a bunch of monks who were caught by thieves. I think they were traveling and thieves robbed the monks. And what they did was they tied the monks up with reeds, with plants, maybe because they didn't have rope or something. So they tied the monks up. And the monks just let, how you say, after they were tied up, the monks did not struggle and break free of their restraints because they did not want to harm the reeds. I think I got that right. Yeah. So monks, we don't, for us, killing takes on a very, I wouldn't say extreme view, but it's a very, to the smallest detail of not harming or destroying life at all. Yeah. Okay, so we have killing, abstaining from killing, and then we have abstaining from stealing, which is taking what has not been given to you. That's considered stealing. It also guards the mind or acts as a mirror to alert you of thoughts of greed, of jealousy, of covetousness. Wanting things that you don't have, which is why you steal. Okay. Third one, abstaining from sexual misconduct, meaning no sexual relations with anyone that you are not in, that you're not married. That's the strict definition. The Buddha described it in a very, how you say, the Buddha described it in a very interesting way. And the Buddha said, not with people who, let me see, how do you say it? He said not with people that belongs to someone. What he meant was that if, say, if you do something, okay, let me flip it around. Say if you have a brother, a sister, your mother, your father, people that you care about, okay, and then comes along a person who tries to tempt them. So your sister might not be in a relationship, your brother might not be in a relationship, but someone comes and because they feel physically attracted, they try to entice them. How would that make you feel? I don't think anyone really likes that to happen. They would want people to be genuine and to follow, how you say, not be casual with people that they care for, so that the people that they care for don't get hurt, and be respectful for the people they care for, right? So the Buddha said, as long as someone belongs to someone, meaning someone has an uncle, a auntie, a brother, a nephew, a niece, someone who cares for them. So I will put the category of friends as well into someone, like a good friend or something. So the Buddha says, you don't mess around with that. If you do, you're breaking the precept of sexual misconduct. So basically that covers everyone, and I think that's a really great way of explaining sexual misconduct, on top, not the only way, but on top of the other ways that is already being explained. Okay. Abstaining from lying. People think lying is just saying things that are not true. Yes, but that's a very narrow definition of this precept. It also covers unskillful speech. What is unskillful speech? Well, we know it's false speech. We also can include harsh speech, speech that may be true, but when you say it, in the way you say it upsets people. Harsh speech, you're using it to scold people, to make them feel upset or afflicted. Slanderous speech, gossip, idle chatter, all this, and then there's another one they say, you you use speech to create factions, to make one person fight against another person. So all these are considered the precept of lying. And then the final one, taking intoxicants. This is anything that disturbs the ability to concentrate. Okay, so I won't go into detail into the actual 5 precepts and what they mean, and because this is not a class on precepts. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on the 5 precepts, but give us more about the perspective of the precepts. And I would encourage everyone who wants to know more about precepts to join Dharma Master Yong's class on precepts. Yong Fashu from CDTB has been holding a class on precepts. The last time, and this was many years ago, he was on the 5 precepts. I'm not sure what precepts um, he could be on the Bodhisattva precepts now. I'm not very sure, but I would encourage everyone to check that out if you are interested in learning more. Okay. So someone asked Shufu a question. He said, why should I observe the 5 precepts even though I haven't taken the vow to uphold them? This is a commonly asked question. Shufu says, the 5 precepts are the precepts of our inherent nature. You should observe them whether or not you have taken them. The act of taking the precepts is a phenomenon, while following them is a nomenon. You must uphold the precepts purely in order to achieve perfection in phenomenon. So, first of all, if you have a question about what's a nomenon, a phenomenon is something that the the let me see, the definition of a phenomenon is something that the 6 senses can perceive. So it has some form of shape, smell, um, some physical kind of characteristic that we can measure through our body. Whereas a nomenon is more like a principle, that is independent of human sense or your perception. I think it's the same category as cause and effect. Okay, you may not be able to see it, hear it, smell it, hear, see, smell, taste, and all that, but it is there nevertheless. Yeah, even deeper than gravity. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I don't know what I'm talking about, but you get the meaning. Okay, so which is why the first four of the 5 precepts, which are the first 4, let me go back one slide. Killing, okay, non-harming, not taking what is not given, sexual misconduct, and lying. These are the first 4. Okay, let me go back to the slide. Okay, the first 4 are commonly known as natural precepts. So for someone who has not taken the 5 precepts, or who does not observe um, the 5 precepts, if you break the precepts, the same thing is going to happen to you. You are not going to come back as a human. It's very straightforward. So it doesn't mean that if you don't take the 5 precepts, it means that you are free of cause and effect. The cause and effect is still there. Okay, so we take the precepts to remind us. It's a promise. You can look at the precepts as a promise that you are making to yourself, a promise that you're making to your Buddha nature that you want to walk the path. And the only way to do that is not to fall, to at least come back as a human being so that your chances of being able to practice are retained. Okay, something like that. All right. Let me see. We are 9:48 right now, meaning less than 12 minutes. And I have a story, you know. Maybe I'll do the story. Ramon Shaw always encourages me to have more stories. He say, people, you have to, how you say, listening to the sutra all the time is very boring. So he's encouraging me to have more stories. So let me go to this slide. Okay, let me end this slideshow. Okay, give me a few seconds. Let me find the right slide. This story is on the 5th precept. It's about taking intoxicants. It's a very interesting story. Okay, I found it. Okay. It's called, it's from the Jataka tales. What are the Jataka tales? The the Jataka tales, okay, that's a bit of a tongue twister, is a collection of all the stories that the Buddha told about his own past life. Okay, so the Buddha was a great storyteller. He was a master storyteller. And he would always use examples from his past lives to explain either the sutras that he would speak about, or unusual situations that they will encounter. So this is Jataka number 512. I think there's a total of 548 or maybe 648, 5 to 600 collections of stories that the Buddha told based on his past lives. So this goes like this. It's a pretty long story, but I think we can get it done. It says, once while the Buddha was staying at Jetavana Monastery in Savatthi, the wealthy and devout lay Buddhists, um, oh, sorry, okay. I thought, okay, there's a person called Visakha. Okay, so once while the Buddha was staying at Jetavana Monastery in Savatthi, Visakha, the wealthy and devout lay Buddhist, was invited by 500 women she knew to join in celebrating a festival in the city. This is a drinking festival, Visakha replied. I do not drink. All right, the woman said. Go ahead and make an offering to the Buddha. We will enjoy the festival. The next morning, Visakha served the Buddha and bhikkhus at her house and made great offerings of the 4 requisites. That afternoon, she proceeded to Jetavana to offer incense and beautiful flowers to the Buddha and to hear the teaching. Although the other women were already quite drunk, they accompanied her. Even at the gate of the monastery itself, they continued drinking. When Visakha entered the hall, she bowed reverently to the Buddha and sat respectfully on one side. Her 500 companions, however, were oblivious to propriety. They seemed, in fact, not to notice where they were. Even in front of the Buddha, some of them danced, some sang, some stumbled around drunkenly, and some bickered. In order to inspire a sense of urgency in them, the Buddha emitted a dark blue radiance from his eyebrows, and everything suddenly became dark. The women were terrified with the fear of death and instantly became sober. The Buddha then disappeared from his seat and stood on top of Mount Meru. From the curl of white hair between his eyebrows, he emitted a ray of light as bright as if 1,000 moons and suns were rising. Why are you laughing and enjoying yourselves? He demanded. You who are always burning and surrounded by darkness, why don't you seek light? So this is a very dramatic uh, uh, opening to the story. I always have in mind the Buddha as being very calm, very gentle, but apparently this is not the case. First, the Buddha scared them so badly that all of them instantly became sober. You know, if you ever had alcohol, you know that's almost impossible. And not just that, but he then flew on top of the Mount Sumeru or Mount Meru, emitted white light now. It was dark light before, like a horror movie, you know, light that's like a shadow, dark blue light. And now he emits white light and he starts scolding them and say, why don't you seek light? Okay. Can you guess what happened next? Anyone knows what happened next? Okay. We're running out of time, so I won't make you guess. So the Buddha's words touched their now receptive minds, and all 500 women became stream enterers. Can you imagine that? All of them became first stage arhats. The Buddha then returned and sat down in his chamber. Okay, what are first stage arhats? Is a big deal. Okay, when there used to be a monk, what's his name? They call him the fruit monk. I think it was Venerable Qing Guang in Taiwan. Shufu had a lot of good things to say about this monk. And Shufu said that when this monk was around, Taiwan was always protected by Dharma protectors. And there was when Shufu met this monk, I think Shufu went to Taiwan. This monk was pretty elderly. I seen the photos, and he looked pretty old already at that time. And Shufu introduced him to, I think, Rama Hongshou and Mahdi Wohoven. I think Mahdi was a monk at that time too, still a monk at that time. And uh, the fruit monk said, "Oh yes, I saw them as I was flying above the U.S." Something like that. And Shufu introduced Rama Hongshou and Mahdi to the fruit monk. Okay, so coming back to the story. Um, So all the 500 women became stream mentors. So this is not recommended to anyone who thinks that, oh, maybe you should get drunk and come to the temple. No, don't do that. Not recommended at all. All right. So the Buddha then returned and sat down in his chamber. Visakha bowed to him once more and asked, Venerable Sir, what is the origin of this custom of drinking alcohol, which destroys a person's modesty and sense of shame? In answer to Visakha's question, the Buddha revealed this story of the distant past. So this story is very interesting because the Buddha is revealing, I think in our Saha world, in this um, present world system that we are in, the moment when alcohol was first discovered. So we think that, you know, maybe 5,000 years ago, Egyptians brewed alcohol or something, or people saw drunken animals in the forest, and that's how. But the Buddha is going way back. The Buddha is going to, in this world system, this current, what we call it, Jambu Vipa that we are in, when was the first time alcohol was discovered? And that's all the story I have for you for today, because we are running out of time. So I will leave you in suspense until next week. Sorry to do that. I have to learn how to manage my time better. Okay, before we go to Hilda's announcement, Let me share Julie's story, which I didn't have time to share from last week. So Julie says that she said this was yesterday. So I think this was just last week that it happened. There were a lot of ants in her home, in the kitchen. She said the ants were marching from outside into the back of the kitchen and then going up the cabinets. And this made her house helper really frustrated. If you ever tried working in the kitchen and you're not supposed to harm living beings and there are insects all over the place, you can um, you know how difficult and frustrating it can be. And for anyone who is thinking about what's the big deal, they're just ants. Okay, I would suggest that that's a really arrogant way of thinking. Um, in fact, someone asked Shufu the same question about ants, and Shufu was very strong in his answer. I don't have it right now. Maybe after Hilda, as Hilda is announcing, I can do a search for Shufu's exact question. But Shufu said, you cannot kill any ants. You cannot. Shufu said that he considers himself as an ant. And if you've read Shufu's teachings before, he said that many times. And Shufu kind of said like, you want to kill me too or something like that, just to highlight how serious how careful we should be against harming any living being. Okay, any living being. So Julie said that the householder, the housekeeper, her maid had sprayed insecticide, but it wasn't working. So Julie had this idea. She said she told the housekeeper to get the steam machine to steam the whole kitchen instead of using chemicals. But before the steaming was done, Julie told the ants to leave as the kitchen will soon be clean and the ants will be harmed. And she chanted the Great Compassion mantra. And as she was chanting the Great Compassion mantra, she said she was watering the plants in the front yard with the wish that the ants would leave. And then 15 minutes later, she went back to the kitchen and the maid asked her what she was chanting because she said all the ants have disappeared. So Julie wanted to share this story. And I know a lot of you have similar stories as well, including myself. My mom has kind of done a very similar thing. Okay, Hilda.
Yes, here I am.
Okay, so I'll let you go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to give you all an update on how is Sashal doing. He had a pneumonia and he is currently in the ICU with the pneumonia and he's feeling okay. He feels that he's gradually getting better, but his lungs are covered at 40%. So his wife got sick as well, and she is doing better than him. And this is from today, earlier, that I got this exchange with him. And so basically that's what I wanted to let you know. And then I found out, because I was interested, that we can offer pathways for him and his wife. And there are ways of doing a pathway for a month. In this case, a long life pathway. And for those who are interested, apart from, of course, residing for them. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Hilda. Yeah.
Welcome.
So Sachal is he's on oxygen in Mumbai, in a hospital in Mumbai. He's getting very good care. But anything that we can do to help, So if you have any questions, you can contact Hilda if you need to. Okay, so I found Shufu speaking about ants. Shufu said that. So one question is, someone asked Shufu a question. Said, I heard that bowing to preeminent monastics creates merit and virtue and eradicates past karma. Is this true? Shufu says yes and no. Says if the Dharma master that you bow to is a genuine cultivator, then you would attain merit and virtue from bowing to him. If the Dharma master that you bow to has no virtue, in the future he will have to bow to you in order to pay back his debt. Shufu says, how do I know this? Because I know that I owe debts to many beings. At age 12, I began to bow to all living beings, including mosquitoes and ants. I have never hoped for them to shine light on me. I don't wait around for it because if I did, I would owe so much to so many that I could never repay my debts. So Shufu said this about ants. And for the question about um, killing ants itself. So the question is, people who have taken the precept should uphold the precept against killing. However, I violate this precept almost every day because I have so many ants at home that I inadvertently keep stepping on them. Please teach me a way to eradicate my offenses. Shufu's answer, you should kill me first, as I am also a little ant. Okay, that's very, very clear, right? All right, let me see if there's another one about ants. Um, yes, there's one more. This question is, my parents not only pray to the Holy Mother of the heavens and the goddess of the sea. I think this person is Taiwanese because the goddess of the sea is Ma Zhu in Taiwan. It says, but also make offerings to the three sages of the west on our altar at home. Can I bow to them together with the Buddha? Shufu says, as a cultivator, we should be kind, humble, and respectful towards everyone, be they be the goddess of the horse. Okay. It says here Shufu is playing on the Chinese characters Ma Zhu, which may, I think if you say it differently, means horse, or the goddess of the cow. Shufu is making a joke. It says all living beings have the Buddha nature and can become a Buddha. Even ants and mosquitoes can realize Buddhahood when they turn away from delusion and return to the state of awakening. We don't have to draw distinctions between whether they are the goddess of the horse, goddess of the pig, goddess of the cow, or goddess of the sheep, meaning just be kind, humble, and respectful towards everyone. Okay. Um, okay, and I think that's it. Any more questions, or anyone heard something that reminds them of something that they want to share? Okay, let me look for the dedication of merit. I apologize again for leaving everyone halfway on the Jataka story. Be sure to tune in next week. Okay. Slideshow. Okay, dedication of merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's bow 3 times to the Buddhas. First bow, second bow, third bow, half bow. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. First bow, second bow, third bow, half bow. Everyone, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next week. Amitabha.